Hey there, and welcome back to another Future of Work Campus Industry Insider. Now, I'm super excited about today's guest because not only is she one of the best in what she does, and I couldn't have probably asked for a better expert and insider to join us for today's topic, which is all about dealing with difficult people, especially in group settings. But Kate is also a Future of Work Campus member. Now, what's really interesting with Kate, we've known each other for quite some time, but her background is actually not in facilitation or presentation. Her background is in data analytics. And this is often a stereotype that data experts can't talk or can't tell stories or have difficulties to present. And this is actually what made her profession where she is in now. So she uses a lot of visual communication and storytelling to actually get data and facts and figures across. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation on how we can actually get people on the journey, how to deal with difficult people, but then also what can we do in case something happens online or in offline meetings, because in fact, it's more important than ever to be able to facilitate conversations, whether you are a leader or not, whether you are a facilitator or not. It's all about collecting IP and interest and input together and get people on the same page. So with no further ado, here is my interview with Kate. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks, Petra. It's so exciting to be on your podcast. I'm a long-time listener since the beginning, so it's really lovely to be a guest. Thank you.
Well, likewise, I've been on your podcast, which I absolutely love. I don't think I've missed an episode yet, and I couldn't recommend it any further. So maybe just a quick plug, where can everyone find your podcast?
We live at the Presentation Boss podcast. We talk about all things presentations. We have interviews with people like yourself, Petra, and people who just have really cool things going on, really great experiences and perspectives. And then we have discussions about a specific topic. And then also we look at a speech and break it down, work out what's really working well and what could be improved, which means it's kind of a 2-in-1, those format. You get to listen to a TED Talk or some speech that we found on the internet, plus a bit of information about it.
And this is what I love so much, because it's so practical and it's real life examples, not theoretical stories or case studies. And this is also what I'm looking forward to today's conversation, because I know you've got a ton of experience and case studies, what you have lived through over your facilitation career. Now, but before we get into all the tips and tricks and tools and fun stuff, how did you get to where you're now? Because you didn't start here.
No. I am a very classic data analyst. I started my career in data analytics, and my whole life, my dad was an engineer. I joined an electrical engineering company. I married an electrical engineer. My friends, my social circle are all engineers. And that's just kind of how I learned to communicate. There's really kind of very direct, very statistical facts and figures kind of communication. And then I was thrown into a completely different environment. Like I worked in finance for a while, and that was fine. They were all the same, like accountants, and not that different to engineers. And then I was thrown into workplace health and safety. And it was this kind of mishmash team of creatives. And there was only 2 analysts, and the rest were like all these creatives. And I would start talking. And then there was this woman in my team, Tiffany, and she would just go, "You got to translate this. You're not even speaking English. I don't know what you're talking about." And it really took me back, because she was really assertive. She was absolutely lovely, but she was so assertive, and she just stopped me in my tracks and was just like, "I don't get what you're talking about." And it was a real moment of having to learn how to communicate with like the creatives and the people who are really different to me. And also being in workplace health and safety and dealing with, it was an electrical engineering company, the electrical distributor here. The safety side was super high risk because electricity. And if the safety messages weren't getting through, then it had massive ramifications. So the communication was so imperative, and I had to learn how to translate safety statistics into something that people were going to listen to, that they were going to understand, and that they were going to actually respond to. So yeah, that was this kind of multi-year journey of going from just speaking to people like myself and then speaking to people who are different. And now I teach other people who are in that same situation of being more technical, more facts, figures focused, and teaching them how to communicate with the normals.
And this is so relevant, especially in today's world and also in the future of work, when we talk more about cross-functional teams, but also global teams. People have different language, but also different interpretations. And there's often the translation between tech and commercial or tech and creative. And one doesn't necessarily understand the other one. So having somebody who can translate and get people on the same page is so important if you want to work towards one outcome. And even I can remember from recruitment days when I placed my digital and tech talents, the first question every client asked, but can they speak English? And it wasn't necessarily just the English language. It's literally, hey, do they communicate to start with, do they talk, or as headphone on and I'm out of here? And then how they talk, can I understand it, or am I dumb when I talk to them? And I think, maybe you can also touch base a little bit on the technical aspect, because often we throw out acronyms and tech language and the other person is just like, huh, what? What we also call the brand building side of things, it's what people remember about you. When you make them feel dumb because they don't understand what you're saying, it's got a negative impact on you. Can you talk a little bit more about how you actually got to translate the tech language into the normal language?
Yeah, I think a very confronting moment for me was when, again, this same woman who, she said to me, making me feel dumb does not make you look smart.
Gold right there.
And you're like, but I'm not trying to make you feel dumb. I'm just talking normally. And she's like, yeah, but it's a different world. I don't get it. So I think the most important thing is to understand that we are just so different, and a trap that we can fall into if we are in a specific department, a specific industry, even a specific business. There are so many acronyms, so many terms, even software programs that you just use as part of your day-to-day vernacular that you just then take into your conversation outside of that little world, and it just isolates people. And you've got to be really careful and really conscious of when you can use that terminology and when you can't. And that is a conscious switch that you have to make. We talk in safety, you've got LTIFR, LTISR, AIFR. And as soon as you start talking like that outside, people are like, what is, like, that is literally a different language to them. And I've had the same experience on the other side. My stepbrother is a programmer for Google, and he is just like, he was born programming. He is just a genius. And as soon as he starts talking computers and programming, no one can understand him. He now works in like the super technical side of Google, which is where he belongs. But again, like, he is just, he talks in another language and you can't understand him, and it doesn't make him look smart. It just makes me look dumb, and it makes me not like that conversation. It just so happens that I, had to have a relationship with him, but it would have been very difficult to have a relationship with someone who's just speaks another language. I mean, you've got that. You've got two completely separate languages as well. I imagine you've come across the same thing learning English.
Yeah, even just the cultural upbringing. Like in German, I'm from Austria, so German is very straightforward, the language. There's no thanks, I appreciate it. It's thanks, full stop. And this is nice. And people, when I started my career, it was just like, do this and don't bother to go home before 7:30. It was just very strict. So when I came to Australia and I started leading teams, and I was exactly the same. People are like crying, and it's like, you can't say that, you have to reword this email. And I was like, what's wrong with this? So much more fluff in there. But I didn't realize it's just a different cultural environment. So I also need to adjust if I want to get ahead. It's not how I perceive it, but how others perceive it. So also, when we talk about that, sometimes when we say something, especially the tech language, and people don't understand, instead of them saying, oh, I'm not quite sure what you say, it can often actually turn into aggression, because that's also a defense mechanism. And this is where the difficult conversations start. Now, can you talk a little bit more about what we can actually do if we to prepare ourselves to the talk, but then also how to handle those pushbacks and negative feedback?
Yeah, so I think in if we're talking about presentations, and I don't mean, necessarily like a TED talk, this could just be a project update that you give in a team meeting. That's a presentation. It doesn't have to be, standing up at the front of the room necessarily. It's just simply speaking to a group. And sometimes you'll have people in that group who push back, and it can be seen as aggression. It can be seen as being a difficult person. It is not necessarily how they intend it to be, which means that we need to deal with it with respect and with tact, because if you just hit back, you're not going to look particularly good, and you could really offend them if that's not how they intended to come across. If they're simply trying to ask a question and you've just kind of smacked them with you're being difficult, it can really not get just them offside, but everybody else in that room just goes, whoa, well, I'm not going to ask my question now, if that's going to be the response. So you need to really just be careful about making sure that you are always respectful of the other person, no matter how difficult you perceive them to be.
So much gold, because you said it has the ripple effect. It's not just affecting this one person. And you're so spot on with the presentation, a team meeting update, a stand-up huddle, 10 minutes, that's a presentation, because you are informing others. And it's not just about putting data and facts and figures out, but also explaining what it actually means for them, that everyone is again on the same page. But if I don't understand the first part, I don't know the second part, and then like, but when I'm asking questions, I look dumb, I better not. And then from there, all the problems actually stem from.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess when, you going back to your actual question, is how do you actually start preparing for that? With everything, you need to understand your purpose. You need to make sure that you know what you are trying to achieve with this, let's call it a presentation. If it's a project update, say, you may just want people to know something, or you may want to assign actions. You need to know what you are trying to achieve by the end. Because if you know what you're trying to achieve, then that means you've got a track that you can stay on. So then if someone tries to pull you off track, you know where to go back onto, if that makes sense. You've got some sort of path that you're kind of trying to follow. Otherwise, it just becomes too easy for people to hijack you. So I guess there's a couple of types of different scenarios that you might have, types of difficult people. I have got a list of them, and I've kind of named them because we did a podcast episode on it, and we went through and we're like, oh, we could assign really kind of funny names to them. So do you want to go through them?
Love it. Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right. So let's talk about probably the one that we've all experienced, and that is the commentator. And this is someone like, you've got 3 minutes to get questions in, and they've got a 5-minute story to tell.
Oh, yes. I've come across all of them.
Oh, yeah. And you've got, you can see that 3 other people want to ask questions, but you know that all this time is going to be not wasted, but it's going to be spent on this one person who just has their story to tell. And often this can feel like they're wasting your time, but it's usually a skill gap. They don't know how to be succinct, and they don't know how to ask what they want to ask. So a very simple way, and I recommend this with just about every situation, is indexing. And that means you have to have phrases that are predetermined that you can bring out when needed. Because what happens in those situations, if you've got someone who has sparked some sort of emotional reaction, and that could be anger. Anger is a very common one. It can make you spike, and all you see is red, and you cannot think in that situation. If you're already nervous in a presentation, that's an emotion. And that, again, that's what people are worried about, that they're worried about going blank. It could be confusion, it could be frustration, it could be shame, it could be embarrassment. There's so many emotions that are liable to be struck at any given moment from someone just niggling you that little bit. And you need to not react to that emotion. You need to have predetermined phrases that you can bring out. So for example, someone who is just talking and talking and talking, and you're like, oh my God, we're going to run out of time here. You need to very firmly and gently hold up a hand and say, I'm just going to pause you there. What's your question? And that does actually make them stop and think, what is my question? And it's a very clear signal. You're going on a little bit long. We need to be a bit more succinct.
I love this tip already, because it's very assertive, but not disrespectful.
That's it. You have to balance being assertive and respecting them and the whole meeting and everybody in that meeting.
Mhm.
All right, so the next one, this is the worst one you will experience, is the sniper. This is the person who is out to get you, the person who is determined to make you look bad, feel bad, prove that they know more than you. I don't know what their agenda is sometimes. But again, we've seen this person, and usually it can be maybe a disgruntled employee if they are questioning like senior management maybe, and everybody in the room just goes, oh God, I'm so glad it's not me having to deal with that. And this is the one that makes the anger response spike, because you know that they're there just to be a difficult person. And again, if you can index and if you can shut that conversation down as quickly as you possibly can, respectfully again, and the phrase might be something like, thank you for your comments. We'll discuss this later. Thank you for your comments. Send me an email about it. Or probably the most assertive, thank you for your comments. It's not appropriate right now. And that is a very clear signal that I'm not going to engage with this. I'm not going to continue and go back and forward with you. And we're going to move on.
I love the addition, not right now, because it's less harsh than this is not appropriate, because it might be appropriate, but not in this setting and it's not in that context. So I love this tip.
Yeah. And I cannot think of that in the moment because I am an emotive person, and I get that response, that, you know, frustration, anger, confusion, embarrassment. I get that. And I can't think in the moment. So if I don't have those responses kind of there ready to go, then I'm screwed in a situation. Mm-hmm. So there's no point kind of, you know, listening to this podcast and going, oh, okay, yep, I've got my phrases. You need to look at them as you walk into those meetings. And I've got a list on my phone of indexed phrases that I can just flick through and go, okay, yep, that's right. That's what I need to have in the back of my pocket, ready to throw it when needed. It's the same with jokes. You know, like I've got a little joke file. If I go into a meeting and, you know, just some one-liners that are possibly appropriate, helps you be funny. It's the same, helps you be assertive if you've got those indexed phrases ready to go.
What a good tip. It all comes down again to preparation, because ideally you want to memorize it, but then you're taken out of surprise with a statement. It's like, oh, I should be witty now, or I should be this and this. So the more you can prepare for it, and even just a quick jog of memory saying, oh yeah, I could say this and this, we're good to go. It also gives you more confidence, and with that you're showing up very differently. Amazing tips.
Yeah,
what's
absolutely.
next, or who's next?
Let's go with the corrector. So most people will have had this experience when they're presenting some sort of facts, statistics, numbers, something. And I'll give you an example. I was in a large meeting. There was about 60 people that I was presenting safety statistics to. And I said the LTIFR for this month is 2.5. And then I started to continue, and someone went, hang on. I'm pretty sure it's 2.54. And I was like, okay, I know that it's 2.5, but I'm not going to get into this discussion. And I said, no, it's 2.5. And he said, well, no, because we did our calculations, and like the way that you calculate LTA, I should actually clarify, lost time injury frequency rate. It's like the number of injuries that we've had. Yeah, I've just realized I'm like telling you not to do this, and then I'm doing the exact same thing. It is the number of injuries that you have multiplied by 1,000 divided by the number of hours worked. It sounds like a simple calculation. And that's what you can start arguing about, is the calculation. Whereas if you look at the number of hours worked, that takes into account sick leave, paid work, overtime. We were a emergency organization, so you've got emergency response. There are so many parts that make up that calculation, and it is so easy to get into that discussion about how your number was reached, why your number is correct. And all that does is A, takes you off track, B, questions your credibility and how you're actually doing your job, and C, it really bores people, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is not to discuss the number. if I look at that presentation, it was, has this gone up or down? Are we doing better in our safety this month, or are we doing worse? So again, having that index phrase, I will check the numbers when I get back. I'm pretty sure that's correct, but I will check. The point is, our numbers have gone up, which means we're doing something right. Now, what are we doing right? And you start going off onto, again, the purpose and getting back on track. And I did make the mistake at the time of arguing the number. And I didn't get to finish my presentation because my time slot was up and I felt like a goose.
Mm.
Yeah, and people will come across that person all the time of correcting what their numbers are, what's on their slides, what they say. And again, it's embarrassing because your credibility is being questioned.
Mm. And again, this has a ripple effect, because then all of a sudden you question yourself and, oh, did I do the right calculation or this? And this is where you get off track with your own train of thoughts, and you actually can't get to the end result, because yes, maybe it has a big impact, the 0.4 in the big grand scheme, but in the moment it doesn't, because it might be just an element of the presentation, but you lead to a much bigger picture and you didn't get that across. And I think it then has a much bigger ripple effect when you go back to the team, when you go back to the organization, when you get tasked with another project, because that will always stuck in your head.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, the person that I take the most inspiration from here is Dr. Carl. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Science Hour with Dr. Carl.
No.
He's just this scientist, awesome guy who does an hour of science on Triple J each week.
Mm.
And people ring in asking him science questions and he answers as best he can. And sometimes he comes back on the next week and he's like, you know what? I said this last week and it actually is this. I was slightly incorrect. Just want to fix that up. And if you admit to your mistake, correct it, then the more that you say, the more confidence that people are going to have in you, because you are willing to go back and correct what you've said and make sure that your work is accurate.
Mm. And that's key, because everyone makes mistakes. And sometimes you just confuse those facts or figures or insights with something else. It wasn't right intention. That's a great tip. Just own it up and address it as quickly as we can, and not leave it until 6 months down the track and then it already created some more issues.
That's it. You don't need to be right. You need to be accurate. That's my philosophy.
Oh, this is a tweet right there. Who is next?
All right. The last one, we're going to go with just the rambler.
Mm.
So this is the person who just wants to say something and they start talking and you're not sure what they're saying. They don't really have a question. They're not really adding into anything, but they just need to have their voice heard. A great example of this is Q&A. If you ever watch, it's like the political ABC program, and someone just stands up and they want to have their say. And oh gosh, I can't remember the guy who runs it. I think it's Mark, someone. Anyway, he will say to them, thank you, we'll take that as a comment, and moves on. Because the awkward thing is we can stand there and kind of go, okay. And again, it's easy to delve into their conversation and to go off onto their track. But then you know that it's not necessarily what you want to talk about, but moving on can be difficult unless you've got that phrase there that can, cool, okay, you've had your say, let's move on. Thank you for that. We'll take it as a comment. This can be used as well if someone has an irrelevant question or an aggressive question. Oh, well, what do you say about, Petra, what do you say about people who just don't have the qualifications for their next job and they're still trying to apply for them? And you're like, well, we're not talking about that today. Thanks for your comment. We'll take it as a comment. Actually, today we're talking about how you don't need qualifications or whatever, you would talk about, whatever you want to get back on track with. I think I totally stuffed up that analogy, but does it make sense?
100%.
Yeah,
and as you go through all the types, I'm thinking of so many clubhouse rooms that I have been in recently, because in the end, this is facilitation on steroids, because you don't know who's coming, who don't know what they're going to say, and you have to respond. There's nothing curated. You can't prepare. And I think this is actually the quickest way to learn all of that, because if you go into an organization or join a new team or whatever it might be, you also don't know who you're dealing with in the end. So the more you can practice that, the better you become. So they're amazing tips, and you find all those people everywhere. They're just, if this would be, a mathematical distribution, I've come across all of them, and it's so good how you classified them, that we can also see how do we deal with these people, because it also gives us more confidence to see, oh, this is definitely the one who is waffling on it. This is definitely the one who is, but I'm preparing ahead what I'm going to say. So, I can also kind of protect myself a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the purpose, like what you're aiming to do, is stay in control of the situation, stay respectful, and make sure that you're not making them or yourself feel or look bad.
Yes, this is a big thing, because again, it has a ripple effect on others, because they might think I'm better not say anything because I don't want to look bad or whatever it might be. Now, and staying on this topic actually with Clubhouse and so forth, over the last 12 months, clearly we've seen the shift from offline and in-person events and conferences and meetings to online. Now, is there a difference? And also, are there some tips and tricks how we can get people back on track without maybe muting them or moving them away or kicking them out of the room? Are there some tips that you can share?
I mean, obviously it's a hugely different world, online and offline. I think when you're offline, when you're in a room with people have to be pretty openly rude to sit there and play with their phone, and you can see them doing it, and they know that they're being watched, so they will sit there and they will watch and listen out of politeness. Whereas online, they could be, scrolling Facebook and you'd have no idea. They could be nodding along, smiling, you'd have no idea. So you're competing with literally the entire internet. And trying to keep people engaged and focused is extremely difficult. We're saying, oh yeah, it's a little bit harder. No, it's insanely harder. It really is, because also you don't have that peer pressure of people around in the audience to stay focused, and you don't have, like if you've got someone sitting next to you and they're really focused, there is a part of you that says, well, he's really interested. Maybe I should listen because it's clearly interesting. Whereas if you don't have that and everyone else is kind of just staring, looking like a blank fish at the screen, even if they're engaged or not, you can't tell that they're interested. It's a hugely difficult format. And I think we hear over and over about interaction. You've got to have more interaction. You've got to be more engaging. But how do you actually do that? Because we only hear, you have to do it. You have to do it. How? How do you do it? And I think it's more than just asking questions. You've got to use your technology better. You've got to be using the poll function in Zoom more. People know that they want different, but they don't know what they want necessarily, because they don't know what they don't know. For example, I'm running a workshop in a couple of weeks, and it's going to be a choose your own adventure. I've got 6 modules that I need to run. And in the past, I would probably have just run them. We'll do number 1 first, and then number 2, and then number 3. It's linear, it's monotonous, it's a bit predictable. Whereas if you say, all right, we've got these 6, what are you guys interested in? We don't have to do all 6. What do you want to do? And have a vote. And then go into the topic that most people are interested in. Because if no one's interested in module 1, don't set them up. Don't start them by going, well, we have to get through this. We just have to. You don't have to. Find what they're interested in and delve into that. And if they don't want to do module 2 at all, then that's okay. That's actually okay. It is better to not do something that people are not interested in than try and force them to learn something, to be involved in something that they just don't want to. I mean, obviously there's exceptions if there's, mandatory training. But if you've got a meeting or a workshop or any sort of forum that you've got different things that you want to talk about, don't think that it has to be linear. And there's so many different ways that you can do like I said, polls in Zoom. You've got breakout rooms are great. In a room of 20, it's very easy to hide. It is not so easy to hide in a breakout room of 3. You get people talking. It took me actually a little while to come around to breakout rooms. I'm all about them now, but I didn't like them at first. So I think if you're not sure about them, give them a couple more chances. It does work really well. And with your PowerPoint, you need again, not just a linear outline. Does that make sense?
Oh, so much sense. And it's so much gold also, because in the end, what you're saying, it's all about collaborative input. Because if you're not engaged, if you have switched off already, and it's like, oh, this is boring, nothing will stick. And with that, the result is 0. So you're just wasting time, energy, money, and all of the above. So it's just getting people also more choice, and also giving them the voice and being part of the journey gives you already so much more buy-in. Whether you are a leader, you're a facilitator, or you're a project leader, you don't need to officially have the title of leader or facilitator to have this power of getting people along the journey, because the more they know about it, the better they feel about it, the more they put in, and the better the results are.
Yeah, for sure. There's a term that I heard, unconference. Have you heard about unconferences?
Not yet.
So basically they've been around forever, apparently, since like the 1800s. Basically, this is a forum where you go to a conference and then people choose what they learn about.
Awesome.
Because
this is now in trend also, when we talk about micro credentials. You learn on demand what's relevant for you, not in case. And this has such a big impact, because there's so much information, so much knowledge, it can be overwhelming. And the same is with those conferences. You cannot know everything. And if you waste time on something that you don't need at the moment, that's not interesting for you, like, what are the chances that you remember anything of that?
Yeah, that's it. Because people are not there for knowledge. You can get knowledge anywhere.
Yes. What are they coming from?
Yeah. They're coming for experience and for wisdom.
There's this saying, you come for the content, but you stay for the community. So it's also the connection with each other, the conversations that going on, the wisdom that people sharing through their stories. So spot on. It's not trying to be the smartest to educate the heck out of it, but facilitating conversations.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's going to be, it will continue to evolve, and this kind of interaction will continue to be more and more commonplace, I think. I know even at schools and universities now, the way that things are being taught is different. And as that generation enters the workforce, they're going to expect something completely different, and they're going to start to run things completely differently. I mean, we're millennials, we're not the young ones anymore in the workplace. There's 8 years of Gen Z already in the workplace, and they are expecting something more engaging, more succinct, more experience-based than just knowledge, because they can get knowledge anywhere. They literally grew up with the internet. We say that we grew up with the internet. We didn't really. Like, I got dial-up in, like, I was grade 4 or something. And I didn't have proper broadband until high school. Whereas my daughter can use TikTok now. I mean, I don't let her, just to clarify. But, she can get on my phone and start playing with all my apps, and she knows exactly how to do them all. She's 7. My son, he's almost 2. He understands how to scroll. He understands how to use a phone. This is what we've got coming into the workforce in much quicker than we're going to realize.
Exactly. And also, there's a reason why Reels and TikTok videos are so captivating, because in 15 or 30 seconds or maximum 60 seconds, you can get so much content information across, but in an entertaining way. And this is the key here. You said experiences. What TikTok and those videos are, it's experiences. When we dance and point and do whatever, it's still more fun than saying, so we're learning 1, 2, and 3. People have switched off already the second you say, today we're learning. Whereas they know how to capture attention by saying, don't make these mistakes. Or if you why your audience doesn't listen to you or whatever it might be. They capture your attention with such a catchy headline, then they give you the top tips and then they're out again. And as you said, this is what we are dealing with and competing with in the workforce. Their attention span is shorter. So how can we keep them engaged? And simply by having those polls, getting them into breakout rooms, getting them involved in a content creation is gold here.
Yeah, for sure. And absolutely get them involved and learn from them.
Yes.
And I think this is a bit close to my heart because, as you know, I was a millennial, obviously coming into the workforce, and there was so much pushback from the older generations that you don't know anything, you don't contribute anything yet, do your time. You have to be here for 10 years before you can contribute, do your time. That's not how it works anymore.
Exactly.
The amount that we know that we knew coming into the workplace was so much more than the generation before. And it's the same thing. We have to understand the amount that Gen Z now knows is more than we knew. So learn from them. And I hope that I have the humility to properly learn from them and not push back because they're younger.
Oh, yes. And this is also what keeps us relevant in this fast changing world of work, the curiosity, the beginner's mindset, and finding something that you're interested in, that you continuously want to learn about it. This is also what gives you a bit of a litmus test as to are you on the right track with it, because there are always iterations, there are always changes, and sticking with something that worked yesterday or last year, and then the algorithm changed and we've got this change coming, it's not going to work anymore. So you're going to fall behind very quickly if you're not embracing that. Learn from each and with each other. It doesn't matter what senior level they are or junior level, everyone's got their own experiences and insights.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Incredible. Well, this was such an awesome conversation. Kate, where can everyone find you, learn more about you, and stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I guess search for me on LinkedIn, just Kate Norris. My website, presentationboss.com.au. And that's basically where I hang out, is LinkedIn and my website. Yes. And of course, the Presentation Boss podcast as well. We are just about up to 100 episodes in 2 weeks.
Incredible. And again, so many valuable resources in this podcast and so many learnings already. So highly recommend to subscribe and not miss anything. Ideally, binge listen to all of the previous episodes because there's so much gold there.
Can I tell you about?
Yes.
My biggest recommendation for an app?
Please.
Okay, this changed my world. Most people have Audible and pay the like $17 a month. There is an app called BorrowBox. Do you know it?
No.
Okay. It is a library app. So you you sign up using your library details. So if you're with whatever library you're with, I'm with Brisbane City Council, and you just sign in using your library card number, and you have access to all of the audiobooks from the library.
No way.
Yep. So I have listened to that many, I mean, there's novels, but there is a massive business section because I cannot afford to download all of the books from Audible each month that I want. Whereas BorrowBox has huge resources. I listen to like Michelle Obama's book. What else is there? Brene Brown's Dare to Lead's there. You've got Talk Like TED, Seth Godin's books. There are so many books available, all for free. Amazing. So if you're not getting quite enough from Audible, if you need more than you can download each month on Audible, because I listen to about 12 or 13 audiobooks a month. So BorrowBox is just phenomenal. It is the best app that you will download.
Amazing. I always love new tools and tips and tricks and apps. So definitely put that also into the show notes. Thanks so much for the recommendation and all the wisdom that you shared. So I'm really looking forward to where you take it to the next level in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you. This was fun.
Awesome.